officially welcome to our virtual town hall. It's nice to see so many faces here today. I already mentioned the muting the mic. We have set aside about an hour for this town hall. About 45 minutes of it is information that we're going to present to you. A number of us are going to speak during that time. And we also have a guest speaker that I'll introduce just a little bit later. It's a surprise. And then if you have questions, as you think of them during the town hall, you can put them in the chat, or you can wait, and we'll kind of help coach you through how to ask that question later on. I just want to start by acknowledging that we are on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional gathering place of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Every time we acknowledge this truth, we have an invitation and an opportunity to reflect on what we do and what we can do to make Manitoba a better place for everyone who lives here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the reconciliation initiatives here at St.Amant a little bit later in the town hall. And I just want to talk a little bit about our culture of mindfulness here. I think most of you are familiar, but if you're not, you're going to hear about it maybe for the first time here. We like to ensure that everyone has a chance when we get together like this to bring their full attention to a meeting and to the people who are, we're going to be spending time with. So I would invite you just to take a moment, if you're comfortable, to lower your eyes, lower your gaze, and to join us in taking a few deep breaths. And with each breath, we'll let go of all of the other things that are cluttering our mind that, have got us to this point during the day. And then we can bring our full focus and attention to one another. So just take a few deep breaths on your own. So thanks, everyone. And again, welcome to our family town hall. So I'm going to begin just with a few quick updates. Most of you are familiar that November 1st, we adopted a mandatory vaccination policy for all of our staff. And I really want to thank our staff for their ongoing commitment to the health and safety of the people we support and of each other. And I would also add to all of you as family members. We had a very, very great response from our staff, meaning that by far the majority of people chose to get double vaccinated. Although we did have a few people that chose not to, and they are no longer working with our organization. And I just wanted to take a moment and reiterate why St.Amant chose to make that decision for November 1st. There was kind of two main reasons. There's many more than that, but I just want to touch on the two main. We support lots of kids, and some of those kids are in our complex care facility, as well as some are in the community. And some of those kids are quite fragile medically. And by having the people around them, looking after them, being double vaxxed, we thought that that was an extra way to protect their health. And then secondly, for all of the people that we support, for them to be able to fully participate in community, meaning that so that they can go to a restaurant or participate in a sporting or a cultural event, in order for them to be supported to attend those events, the staff that work with them have to be vaccinated. If they weren't vaccinated, then those people, whoever's working with them on that particular day, maybe they don't get to go. And for us, that wasn't something that we saw working very well. So those were kind of two of the bigger reasons that we made that decision to ask our staff to become fully vaccinated. Now, for the most part, we've returned to normal. Now, I say for the most part, I think there's still a couple of areas where we do struggle to kind of maintain staffing. And so I've asked if our HR director, Pearl Kavanaugh stays, who is with us tonight, if she would just talk for a few moments about some of the efforts that we're putting into to recruitment and to the retention of our staff. So Pearl, can I turn it over to you now?
Absolutely. Thank you, John, and welcome everyone. And I appreciate being a part of this meeting this evening. So with regards to some of the changes in our staffing that John has mentioned, yes, we are working with creating some partnerships with some of the colleges through the University of Winnipeg, creating some relationships with the PACE program, and definitely having a dedicated team of consultants within HR focused on the recruiting efforts specifically to the CRP program, as well as one individual consultant dedicated to the autism program. We have ramped up the number of interviews that we are conducting on a weekly and regular basis in an effort to fill the voids that we currently have, and also to ensure that we have a steady ongoing recruitment process in place, so that we always have individuals and strength on the bench to be able to bring into the organization and into the homes or wherever our needs may be, to fulfill our obligations and our commitment to yourselves and our community and our kids. And that is an ongoing basis that we have begun a little while ago, and we'll continue to do that for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Pearl. Really appreciate that. And I'm glad you got on. I know that we are having some technical difficulties with sound there. That's awesome. So I just want to say a couple of words about our the wage campaign that we see kind of gaining momentum. And so Abilities, which is a coalition of service providers, which we are a member of, and Disability Matters Vote have been working for some time on the advocacy of increasing wages for direct service workers who work out in the community. We know that the low wages that people are receiving is impacting both recruitment and retention. And so we are in conversation as agencies with government right now and saying, you need to step up and start paying these people a living wage. You also need to reward all of these staff who, since March of 2020, since COVID kind of arrived on our doorstep, have chosen to come to work every day. And some of them could have chosen to go on the COVID benefit at the time. They didn't. They stayed with us. They put themselves and their families at risk, especially in the early stages of COVID. There was so many unknowns. And so we need to be incredibly grateful to those staff. And I know you are, but we need government to step up and say thank you in the form of a living wage going forward, not just right now, not just for the short term, but for the longer term. So that wage campaign is kind of working its way through the system right now, and we may be reaching out to you at some point, asking you to add your voice to the kind of the advocacy movement around increasing wage. So just pay attention. We'll reach out to you by email. For those of you who are part of social media, just keep an eye on your social media, and you'll see things kind of the level of conversation probably increase over the next little while. But I just want to say your voice does really matter, and so we will need you to be part of that solution. Now I want to move to some strategic projects that we have going on within the organization. Some of our projects have been impacted by COVID, so we've slowed down, but I am happy to tell you that there is work that isn't COVID related that is happening and moving forward. We're kind of probably figuring some of that out as we go forward. Not wanting to get too comfortable in COVID, but we are probably our leaders are a little bit more seasoned now around all of the ups and downs that we're facing. So we wanted to highlight 3 projects, and one of them is our Meaningful Connections project, which really focuses on how can we facilitate relationships for the people that we support to have them be more meaningful members of their community. So I'm just going to invite, I think Chris is going to queue up a video for us to watch right now.
when we were sort of talking about this Meaningful Connections project, we were understanding very clearly that part of what we needed to accomplish was a transformation in how our staff see their roles and see the tasks that are important in their day-to-day work. And so in considering that, we thought, well, gosh, there's probably organizations out there that have already, embarked on this journey. Maybe we can learn from somebody that's already been doing this. And that's how we found Starfire. The folks that we're engaging with at Starfire are primarily two leaders from that organization, Tim Vogt and Bridget Vogt. And yes, they're a married couple. Both of them have worked at Starfire for over 20 years now.
What if we could have people have what we call, it's like, you have different aspects of your selfhood, right? To the people around you. To your mom, you're somebody else. To your friend, you're somebody else. To your kids, you're somebody else. To your neighbors, you're somebody else. So a lot of us, our identities aren't single faceted, right? It's more like a disco ball with a lot of different interesting, reflective, shiny, fun surfaces. Instead of this single faceted identity, disability, that defines where we go, who we hang out with, what we do, and who we live with, right? So it's just an expansion of identity. The connections are bigger, right? So we already talked about that. All those great, more connections, more. They don't all have to be like best friends, but more connections. And I get to contribute to the culture. This work taught us that disability is not the problem. The problem is the culture that makes living with a disability or having a child with a disability so difficult. That culture has to be healed. And guess what? Guess who gets to heal it? We do. And guess who else gets to heal it with us? People with disabilities. And guess who else gets to do it with us? Families of people with disabilities and neighbors of people with disabilities. The whole cool thing is we've been focusing on the wrong thing this entire time, which is how do we fix autism or Down syndrome or whatever label we want to give people. In reality, the problem was how do we invite those people to work shoulder to shoulder to fix the culture that's making their life hard.
I think the thing we're most excited for is to celebrate our successes within our organization and to see a shift in the way that we think. We're excited to hear all the different stories and how the people we support can make their community a better place.
Really sitting down with the lady that I support and like, I know what her gifts are, but it's what gifts does she want to utilize? What passions does she want to pursue? So it's like the sky's the limit for this lady, and I just really hope that people in, not just her own community, but other communities can see those gifts that she has. That's really exciting.
Thanks, Chris. That's a little video on our Starfire and Meaningful Connections project. We now have a poll that we'd like to put up. Laura, can you put that up? And it's a question for all of you. So I'm going to invite you to just answer yes or no to the question that's in front of you. And then we'll quickly tabulate the results there. And just a reminder to press submit after you choose yes or no on your screen, and then it should disappear. And once all of the results are pulled together, you'll see how people felt. Would you be interested in participating in some of our Meaningful Connections training? Gives us an idea of if you have interest in learning a little bit more about what you saw in the video. Okay, so our results are, wow, that's awesome. So 87% of the people that responded are yes, willing to hear more about and participating in the Meaningful Connections training. That's awesome. Thank you very much. I'm just going to close that, take that off my screen, and we'll move on. So next, I'd like to call on Sam Chodeker, who is our Acting Director of Community Services, and she's here to talk about an exciting new project that Sam, as I was driving to the office tonight, I heard on the radio the Minister of Families was talking about the new respite resources that are occurring in the community. So very timely. She's going to talk about the Respite and Family Support Project. So Sam, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, John, and good evening, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces. So I'm excited to share some information with you about a project that is near and dear to my heart and has been in the works for a number of years. And so I'll go back about to early 2019, in which we, St.Amant, started to have some more in-depth and pointed conversations with the province about an unmet need in our community here in Winnipeg, as well as rurally, in terms of families with children with significant support needs related to disabilities. And so what we knew to be true is that many families who were struggling were making decisions to place their child in the care of Child and Family Services in order to access resources, to get a break, to receive supports that weren't otherwise available to them. And so we knew that there was an unmet need out there, and as a result, partnered with Children's Disability Services and to some degree with Child and Family Services in putting together a proposal to the Provincial IDEA Fund. And with that proposal, we proposed short-term out-of-home respite services. And recently you would have heard in the summer that this was approved as a 2-year pilot project and funding from our province for that. And so there are 2 components to this program, the first being the overnight respite services, and the second being enhanced family supports. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about those 2 components a little bit. First, to share information about referrals for this program. Our referrals for this will primarily come through Children's Disability Services. However, families will have the ability to self-refer. Advocates will be able to support families to do that, etc. But primarily this will stream through Children's Disability Services to us. And so eligibility criteria has been set for that, but essentially it's meant for families who do not have access to the supports and the respite that they very much need and are desperate for. And so once eligibility is determined for those families and those children that are requiring supports, we move into looking at what their needs are. And so again, the components of this program will be the overnight respite, in which we will be opening 2 homes, one in Winnipeg. It is a former children's community home of ours, and the other one will be located in Brandon. And so both of these homes will be 3 beds, licensed homes, similar to our homes in CRP, and they will be 24-hour-a-day shift staffed homes with enhanced supports in them. And so the intent is for respite stays to be scheduled and for them to be regular or intermittent based on the needs of the family. And they're also intended to be proactive and not reactive necessarily to crisis. The intent is to prevent crisis from developing within the family. So providing the supports and the service, etc. In addition to the respite component and the overnight stay is enhanced family support services. And so this will allow for comprehensive clinical supports for the children and the families. And these services are intended to help develop new skills and coping strategies for those families, while also helping them to work through what we know many families experience in terms of stress and trauma for the entire family. And so with this program, we have a dedicated number of clinicians that will be employed with the service, and they include a social worker, an occupational therapist, a counselor, a behavior analyst, a psychology technician, and an NCI trainer / safety facilitator. So we're quite excited about the family support services that will then be able to go out into families' homes to help them to address unmet needs that they've had for quite some time. I should also mention that this is a voluntary service, and so families will identify that they have a need and that they wish to be part of this component. And so as a whole, the goal of this program is to reduce stress within the family, to build capacity for all members of that family, and in the end, to keep children living at home with their families and preventing them from having to come into the child welfare system. So we're quite excited about this. I forgot to mention timelines. So our goal is to open the home in Winnipeg towards the end of January and the home in Brandon sometime in April. So thank you.
Thanks, Sam. That's very exciting. We're all really excited to see the first home open in January. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Sarah Magdalo, who is our Director of Health and Transition Services, and she's going to talk a little bit about the stabilization renovation that has just begun at 440 River Road. So Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you guys. You know, Sam just talked a lot about, you know, resources and respite to keep families together and, you know, hopefully prevent crisis activity. And, you know, we know that sometimes crisis does happen. And when that happens, we offer a short-term stabilization service where people can come and work with a team that really wraps around them and provides them with support and connects them with resources, and also looks at, you know, how to get them ready and support families to be ready to have these individuals move back into the community or back home with their families. So really excited to talk a little bit about the huge renovation that's happening in that area. I'm sure you're all aware that many parts of HNTS, you know, are on the older side, and certainly the stabilization area, formerly known as the cottages, was an area that did need some work in order to meet the demand and meet the care needs of people supported there. So we have started our journey. It's a $4 million journey, if you can believe it, to really get this space to where it needs to be. And we really want to make sure that the space matches the type of care and support being provided. And as always, our goal is to make sure it's a safe and welcoming space, and safe and welcoming for both the people supported and for the staff that are working there. I think it's important for everyone to know that this $4 million needed for this renovation has been 100% provided through the generosity of donors. So we are so thankful and so grateful to Juliet from the St.Amant Foundation and her team. They have worked tirelessly campaigning, and we have such a wonderful pool of generous donors that have opened their wallets and supported this important project. So there will be updates sent out to families. Kate McKay, who's our Senior Manager of Capital Projects, she'll be sending out frequent updates on the status of the renovations. We've also talked about opportunities for tours through that area, much closer to kind of a completion date. You know, we have a tentative timeline for completion. I'm not going to share it just because I don't want to dangle a carrot in case we have to extend that timeline. We know that COVID-19 continues to place demands on supply chain for multiple things. So, you know, but we have hope that it'll get done as soon as feasible. So, you know, I also want to mention that we do know that there are other areas that require some upgrades, and there have been pockets of work done on the third floor, adult health services, and on the first floor, adult services. And Juliet's team continues to work really hard on raising funds to continue those renovations in those areas. So we do look at kind of the order of which renovations are needed when, and have a system to prioritize based on sometimes it's risk, sometimes it's on things like infection prevention and control. But I want to assure all of you that those other areas have not been forgotten. They stay on our list. And as I mentioned, Juliet's team is working hard to raise funds so we can continue that work. And we also know that there are some areas that could benefit from a less fulsome upgrade. So whether it be some new coats of paint, some new furniture, some more minor upgrades, and those are certainly on our priority list. And the management and senior management team in HNTS are currently assessing those and making recommendations. So a super exciting time in HNTS. For those of you who come and visit your loved ones, you'll notice lots of activity in that cottage stabilization area. There's some work trailers and other things. But I want to reassure all of you that the renovations are being done in a completely safe way. The contractors that come into our building are required to be fully vaccinated. They are screened on arrival, and there is no contact between contractors and people supported. So just wanted to put that in there just for some reassurance. And so I think I'll leave it at that and throw it back to John.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Really appreciate that update. So just to put in context, we talked about 3 projects really quickly, but we have 22 projects that we're involved with here at St.Amant at present. And before we get to the questions, I have a few general updates. Over the next few months, there's going to be some changes to our executive management team. And I wanted to let you know that Nicole Frechette, who is our Director of Finance, has announced her retirement for February of 2022. And Rick, who's with us here, has announced, Rick Quinn, who's our Director of Operations, has announced his retirement for the end of June. So we will be moving forward with advertising those positions, and I didn't want you to be surprised when you see that. But I also just want to take the opportunity, because all of you are here and we don't have a chance probably to get together again, to kind of acknowledge their contribution, both Rick and Nicole, to our organization in your presence. And they have done and worked very, very hard over the years on behalf of this organization. So again, I just wanted to say that in your presence, and we will have further opportunities to kind of thank them. Yeah. So I also want to let you know that we've talked a little bit about meaningful connections tonight. We're going to hear about a couple of other projects here in a moment. We've made a decision. We've asked Peter Duff to step into a role because we have so many projects that are going on with community and that require partnership, et cetera. So Peter's going to step into that role, and he's going to talk in a moment about one of the projects around helping out with the Manitoba Developmental Center as they close, and kind of planning for some of those individuals and some of the process that goes along with that. So Peter's going to step in and take some of those projects on, working with abilities, helping us get our kind of case management house in order for, so there's, and I'm not going to go into all of the projects that he's going to lead. So that as he steps out of his role as a director of community residential program, we've asked Amanda Campbell, who's been a senior manager within that program, to step up and be the director of CRP. And what we've said is that we're in a very unique time right now with COVID. We've got to try and make some of this work move forward. This is a way for us to do this. We're going to try this for a year, and then we're going to reevaluate after the year to see. So those are some changes you may have already heard about or are hearing about tonight for the very first time. So with that, I want to turn it over to Peter, and I want him just to kind of tell you a little bit about some of the work we're doing around the MDC people. So Peter.
Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. Really nice to have the opportunity to spend some time with you this evening. So you're probably all aware that the Manitoba Developmental Center is going to be closing. The government announced that about a year ago now, and they have a 3-year time frame to try and transition the people that are currently still living there out to community. So they have engaged with community service providers and invited us to participate in a request for supply arrangements process. So for the first time, the government is using kind of an online procurement system to try and engage with service providers. And the first step of that is really to ask service providing agencies to submit basically a letter or a proposal of intent around an ability to provide services. So we have been oriented to that system, and we are in process of putting together our proposal. The first step is really quite prescribed. So there's specific forms that the government would like us to populate, and they're really designed to sort of get a measure of an agency's capacity to provide certain kinds of service and willingness to provide those services. There's a time frame of January 13th for us to submit a proposal, and St.Amant has decided that we will submit one of these request for supply arrangement bids, and will indicate that we're prepared to potentially open 4 new homes for as many as 12 people, and that we will look at developing up to 6 new home share resources. Now, this first stage is really just an expression of intent, and the government will use these bids to then just, create a pre-qualified list of service providers that they will then approach around developing service proposals for specific individuals. So right now, we don't have a lot of information. We get some sort of high level demographics about who do they imagine needs to be, services need to be developed for in the community. So we know it's 80 to 100 individuals. We have some sense that they have a variety of support needs, some more intensive, perhaps complex medical, perhaps complex behavioral, and then others who would have, more moderate kinds of support needs. So we will put our bid in, indicating we're prepared to partner and build resources for people that have those needs. But the actual development of a person-specific proposal and the contracting with government doesn't come till later in the process, probably sometime in March, I would think, based on their timelines around responding to the request for service arrangements. So I'll leave it there, John. Thanks.
I started talking, Peter, without my mic on. So thanks very much. I really appreciate that information on the MDC process. So given that we're all together here, I just want to take the opportunity to mention that Sandra Goff, who's going to be speaking from Family Advocacy Network in just a couple of minutes, and I are both members of the Minister of Education's Advisory Council on Inclusive Education. So what that means for you, the reason I'm mentioning it is I'm inviting any of you to provide Sandra and I with information on what you think needs to be done to improve the education system to make it inclusive for all kids, whether they have a learning disability, developmental disability, or any kind of challenge around their education. And we have a number of more months to work on the committee and to put our recommendations together, so you don't have to rush and do it right away. But in the next couple of months, the invitation is there and you can just send the information. You're going to get Sandra's contact information a little bit later, plus we're going to send it out in an email, and we'll also include mine. So I want to just give you a little bit of an update on reconciliation. It's a major priority of government. Even before government announced it as a priority, St.Amant, we've been in discussion for a couple of years around reconciliation. And we know that the journey towards reconciliation requires an understanding of our true history as a country, or also how colonialism has impacted all of us. I'm not sure if you know, but many of our leaders in this organization have taken Indigenous cultural training, and we continue to kind of seek out new opportunities for training. Our board of directors just recently met with a knowledge keeper and had an opportunity to kind of learn that history that I just referenced to get us to a point where hopefully we're all, both our governance and our senior leaders, are at a point of common understanding so that we can move forward and develop action plans for how St.Amant is going to live the reconciliation journey. And I just want to give you a real tangible, quick example. The work that our Jordan's principal staff have been involved in 63 Indigenous communities working with kids with disabilities. Some of the work we've already done have allowed kids to go directly from Children's Hospital to their home community because they have social work and nursing support provided to them. We've also been able to kind of quicken the return of kids that maybe have come to stay with us at 440 River Road back to their home community because of some of those additional resources. So for us, action means changing the way we used to support Indigenous children and adults, and inviting Indigenous leaders and families and communities to help us create that new future together. So I just wanted to kind of mention that work has been started. It will be ongoing, and you will be hearing more about it. And Laura, can I ask you to pop up the next poll now, that is just a quick question on reconciliation, and asking you, would you be interested in participating in Indigenous cultural and reconciliation training in the future if we were to offer it out to you as families? And then so just press yes or no, and then just remind you to press submit at the bottom, and then the results will quickly get tabulated as we're together. And actually, while we're waiting for that, I am just going to take a minute and introduce our speaker for this evening. We're very fortunate to have Sandra Goff here, who is co-vice president, is that right, of the Family Advocacy Network, which is a network of now, I think, and you're going to give us an update, but the last I'd heard was over 500 families here in Manitoba who are involved in supporting a child. It could be an adult child or a child with a developmental disability. And with that, are we ready to put I just want to put the results up first. So we have about 55% of respondents saying they would be interested. So we will, as we move forward in our reconciliation work, be reaching out and letting you know when and what kind of opportunities there are for you to be involved in that journey. So thank you very much for taking the poll. And Sandra, can I turn it over to you now?
Sure, thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. As John said, I'm Sandra Goff, and I am the parent of a wonderful 11-year-old with a rare genetic disorder. And that is how I got involved in the Family Advocacy Network of Manitoba. So the Family Advocacy Network of Manitoba was formed about 4 years ago. It is a network of parents, family members, and caregivers. So it's not necessarily always a parent, but a sibling or someone who is in care of a child or an adult, or loves a person with an intellectual or developmental disability. And it's any disability, and we're all across Manitoba. We're trying to reach every corner as best we can. So FAM really started with the goal of families being able to share information with each other and support each other. We all, I don't know, live in communities with lots of other families, but don't often see families like ours. So if you can talk to someone that knows what it's like to walk your walk, or has a little bit easier time putting themselves in your shoes, it feels wonderful sometimes. The other thing that has come out of FAN is just the ability, now that we have this network of families, to really gather what the similar concerns are in the province and advocate with the government directly. We've been really well received by the Department of Families. We have regular meetings with them where we raise concerns, purely giving them the family perspective on how their policies are affecting our lives. We've also recently formed a relationship with the Department of Education. we're meeting with them quarterly, as well as being invited to the table on all the advisory committees that are working on the better education platform. Plan in the future would be to develop similar relationships with the Department of Health and other departments going forward. So FAN is made up of, we have a core committee. They're the ones that kind of oversee everything, have a monthly meeting, discuss what issues are coming up, and kind of to steer FAN as best we can. And that's primarily who's meeting with the Department of Families. And then within, or like kind of working down the ladder, I guess, we have set up different action groups. So similar to a committee, I guess, but we wanted to call them action groups because we want them to get things done. So we have a quality care action group, which is currently working with Abilities Manitoba on personal outcome measures. We have a supported independent living group. They're working on a research project with U of M called the SMILE Project, supporting Manitobans toward independent living equity. There's been some surveys sent around about that, so hopefully anyone that applies to have seen those surveys. We have the Inclusive Education Action Group, so they're the ones meeting with the department quarterly and sitting on the advisory councils. The Inclusive Education Committee also spends a lot of time supporting individual families and going to school meetings with families because they can be quite intimidating at times. And we're just working on forming an early learning and childcare action committee, which kind of hopes to help families advocate at that level and start working with that department in the government to raise some of those concerns. And then we're, very involved with Abilities Manitoba and Disability Matters Vote. So working on supporting the wage campaign that's coming up. Done lots of work on trying to get Manitoba to adopt triage protocols, other things like that. So, and then, probably our original thought was that we were going to do lots of family networking events, which has been a lot harder since COVID started, but hopefully we'll be able to do those again and really add that piece where we can all get together and share stories and share those tips and tricks and that listening ear. So essentially, if you qualify as the loved one of a person with an intellectual or developmental disability, you qualify as a member, live in Manitoba. Absolutely free to join. We're all volunteers. And really becoming a member is, it means you're either on our email list or you're in our Facebook group. So our email list is really actually open to anyone. You can go onto our website and sign up for our email list. We send out kind of a quarterly newsletter on what we've been up to. We send any surveys along that we think are valuable to people. And we send some of the government circulars that they release out directly to families. Not every agency sends those to families, so we like to make sure everyone sees them. And then on the Facebook page, that's more where families are able to say, hey, this happened, anyone else have this happen, and any suggestions. And it doesn't matter the time of day, as you all know, there are many of us that are up all night with our kids. There's always someone on there, and you will always get I have never seen a post that didn't have a comment back that said, yep, that's happened to me. This is what I did. This worked, this didn't work. Talk to this person, something to that effect. So, and then of course, if you want to get really involved, we're always looking for people on our action groups or on the core committee. So we have a website. It's, I think John promised we'd send it out after, but it is fanmb.ca. Right on the front page, there's a place to become a member, which will get you on the email list. And then at the bottom of the page, there's a link to the Facebook group. It's a closed group, so that one really is only for family members and caregivers. So there's just a couple of questions that need to be answered. So if you do try to join the Facebook page, just make sure you answer those questions. and just explain who you are. That's really what I wanted to share tonight. I don't know, just personally, it was just such a support to know there were other families out there like mine and to be able to make those connections. So really want to encourage anyone. I mean, you can join us, and if it's not helping you, you can leave us. We won't be offended. But it's been a really great connection for a lot of people.
Thanks so much, Sandra. That's awesome. A couple of key messages there. You guys are there to support one another, and you're also there to advocate and bring change, right, to an improvement to the system. And that's and for anybody that's been around in in the world of kind of developmental disability for years, we all know that it is families and parents that really change the system. So yeah, thanks for all your work, and we will send out the contact information for FAN again in the form of an email after the meeting. So thanks again. All right. So just before we get to questions, I just want to take a moment and say thank you. And if we go back to March of 2020, and everyone's lives, both their personal and work lives, were somewhat turned upside down. And it's throughout that journey, you as family members have maintained your commitment to the people that are you're there to love and care for. And you've also provided that support to our staff. You've been kind, you've been understanding, and you've also asked us some really great questions. So on behalf of all of us, our hearts are really full of gratitude towards all of you as families. And I just wanted to express that on behalf of everyone in our organization. And thank you for trusting us, for supporting us, and also for encouraging us in our work. Yeah. So with that, I think we will now move to questions. Now, we had kind of said we're going to do 45 minutes of presentation and 15 minutes questions. We're already at 7:25. At 7:30, I will just kind of step in and say, hey, it is an hour, so, without guilt, if you need to leave, go ahead and leave, but we can probably continue on just for a few minutes after 7:30 if we haven't got through all of the questions. So Jen, can I just ask you to kind of help us move through the questions?
Yeah, so we've got first question. Doug had his hand up first. So Doug, do you have a question?
I must have hit the wrong button.
I can hear you now.
I don't, yeah, no, I didn't have a question. That's all. That's all.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, it's nice to hear your voice, Doug. Okay, we have a question that came in from Anne, and I'm just scrolling up so I can find it. Okay, every corporation is struggling finding individuals, especially positions that are low paying. Also, many are having to offer signing bonuses. Do you feel you can fill your mandate? And what is the current vacancy rate for frontline workers? Lastly, we've been pushing for raises since Disability Matters #1, which was 2016. Do you feel that we're any closer?
Yeah, so Anne, thanks very much. Insightful question there. So I'm going to walk through the different pieces of this. The signing bonus piece, of course, it would help. It's more of a gap kind of approach that gets you through difficult times. I think that was part of the wage subsidy kind of thinking that government, when they rolled out the increased wages for that shorter period of time. The current vacancy rate varies depending on agencies. I've heard as high as 30% in the South, some of the Southern agencies. We can hover somewhere between 5 and 10%, but I need you to understand that that's not always driven by COVID. Sometimes it's different times of year. We see more turnover than others, and it depends on which program area we're talking about. So to your comment about the Disability Matters has been pushing for 5 years. I think some of us who, again, have been around for a while have seen probably closer to 20 years of really no to little attention on the wage issue. And so do I feel like we're getting closer? I feel, I will say this, I think they're listening. I think that message that I said earlier on, it's time to say thank you to people who stepped up and put themselves at risk. I think that message is definitely being heard. I know that when I was a little bit closer to government, I heard from people in central government that had very little knowledge about the disability field, because I had some people say to me, I had no idea that those people were paid at that low a wage. So I think all of the work that's being done right now and some of the fear that's being put in front of government around, if you don't do something, there are some pretty high risk situations that could happen. I think they're listening to all of those messages together. So yes, I would say we are closer. So I'll stop there. And thanks.
Thanks, John.
I'd just like to say there are 2 Anns, and the credit for that great question goes to Ann Fountain.
Thanks, Ann. I see that Brooke, you have your hand up.
Hi guys, I just wanted to extend my thanks to you. My son was just diagnosed with autism last May, and it was a bit of a cakewalk here. It wasn't much of a cakewalk to be getting the assessment done. I was running from doctor to doctor to doctor to get confirmation. And since I've been introduced to your guys' facility, Manitoba Possible and Sky Center, he has made so many thresholds and has been making so much progress. And it's thanks to wonderful people like you who take the time to truly not overlook children that really deserve every opportunity that every other kid deserves. And I appreciate you guys not overlooking children in their situation. And thanks to people like you, my son's truly overcome so many obstacles in the last year. And I look forward to working with you guys and with more people like you and seeing just what he's capable of and the world that he can be bringing warmth and love to and the people around him.
Thanks very much. That feels very nice to receive that. Thank you. So.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll be sure to pass that along to other folks who aren't on the call. I know that'll mean a lot to them. Okay. Anne, your hand is up. Anne Fountain.
As always, I have lots of questions. I listen intently. First of all, congratulations to all the staff at St.Amant for all the pivoting you've had to do over the last several years. I certainly don't empathize our government employees, but my second empathy would go to you guys because you've really had to recreate the wheel in some cases. So kudos to all the leads and all the support staff and all the initiatives and creativity. So thank you for that. I have 3 questions in total. The first one is, do we have an update at all on, I'm not sure if it's official title, but the CSW pilot project where the coordinators have taken over the responsibility of CSW? And the reason I ask is because the feedback within the Family Advocacy Network has been quite negative, where we feel there's been a lack of communication from the government, a lack of communication from the agencies, basically because you're not getting the information from the government, and also a concern about a bias that, you've got your hands in both sides of the pie, that you're being supported by the government. They've designated this position to you guys, but at the same time, you're looking after our loved ones. And I'm not sure if I'm being eloquent enough, but we're concerned that there's a bias there. So that's question 1. And I'll wait for an answer.
Am I throwing this to John or Peter?
I'll start, and then I think part of my answer is actually Peter's, part of the reason why Peter's been pulled out to work on some of these projects. This is one of the ones that we know needs more attention. And just right off the bat, you're bang on, Anne. There hasn't been enough information. I think if families had more information on the service coordination pilot, it would probably reduce some of their anxiety around, it is now that St.Amant is kind of case managing the services for my family member. Does that mean that they have total control over everything? No, absolutely not. It still means that families have access to government. And if they were unhappy with a service provider, they would just simply go to government, and government will still be there and be able to respond. The service coordination project was really based on the idea that when you pay an agency like St.Amant a significant per diem a day to look after someone, the decisions being made for the person should be made by people around the person that is supported, because they know them the best. And that's the kind of the basic kind of belief in that model. I'm not going to be able to answer all your questions tonight. I think the best thing we can do is probably have Peter follow up with you and with all of the other families, which we have a plan to do. I don't know if that's Peter. Do you want to add anything?
Thanks, John. No, I think that's a pretty solid answer, and follow up is certainly something we can do. There is a sort of a project group that involves the 3 agencies currently connected to the service coordination project and government, and it hasn't been a totally smooth pilot project thus far. There has been some things we've bumped up against and some work that we need to do to realize, I think, the vision that was behind this initiative, which, as John said, was to make sure that people who know the folks that are receiving services and are connected to their day-to-day can support them to have decisions made in a more timely, effective way. And so we aren't all the way there yet, but that's the reason for the pilot, is to kind of find out where are the trouble spots, where are the things we're going to have to figure out workarounds. And we are in process of doing that. And I think there's commitment on both sides of the table to see the original vision be realized out of this project. So I'm happy to talk more with you about it. And as John said, we do have a plan to get more information out to people.
Thanks, Peter. I have a number of questions that have come in. So if you're okay, Anne, I'm going to put you in a rotation. So I'll come back to you for your next question in a couple questions. So the next one that we have that was in the chat is from T. McGowan. And is St.Amant doing something special to recognize all the essential workers that have continued to work full-time throughout this pandemic? Our company has provided lunches and gifts periodically throughout the year for our essential staff working in the office.
Just want to make sure my mic's on. Yeah. Okay. So yes, we are trying to reach out. We have over 1,800 staff in our organization. So a few months ago, we gave everyone a box of Morton's chocolates and a thank you message. All of our leaders are actively engaged on a regular basis in trying to show appreciation, show gratitude, say thank you for people showing up. Unfortunately, we don't have as many resources or as much flexibility as some private companies might have to show gratitude. We are government funded, and so whatever we do, we have to show that we're kind of using government funds in a responsible manner. So, and I don't think that means that everything that, recognizing essential workers isn't always about money, but I will come back to that wage campaign. And if we can make a difference there, to me, that is the biggest thing that we could do to recognize all of our essential workers. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Yeah, we've done the We did some publicity, some photo campaign on social media where we thanked our frontline workers and pointed out, especially at St.Amant, there's so many frontline roles. Like often when we think of frontline, we've been hearing all about nurses and doctors, and we have lots of frontline roles that don't fall under those categories. And so we really wanted to highlight all the different people that work in those frontline roles. So we've got an ad on radio right now from our board of directors that is specifically thanking our frontline staff and wishing them happy holidays. So we are trying to make efforts in different ways to reach our staff in different ways. I will have, okay, I've had some questions that were submitted. So I'm going to ask one of those questions now. This one is on air quality. And so it was announced that $6.8 million was allocated for standalone air filtration units for over 6,000 Manitoba classrooms. Will our school at St.Amant be receiving funding to improve our ventilation in the classrooms at 440?
So thanks. I'll jump in on this one. So we have done a couple of things. One is we're hiring a private consultant to look at the air quality within all of the classrooms, which would include here at the building at 440 River Road, as well as the offsite autism classrooms. And we're going to look at air quality there from that private consultant perspective. And also shared health and the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is looking at measuring air quality within the building at 440 River Road. So we're going to have information from those two sources that early in the next year, in the new year, will help us make decisions about what needs to be done, whether there are concerns around air quality or whether we, kind of meet the criteria for turning over air in the appropriate amount of time. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, this is an accessibility question. We recently sent out an accessibility survey that included access to the front doors at 440 River Road. When and how will this be addressed? And so I'm going to throw this over to Ben, who's leading our accessibility efforts.
Sure. Thanks, Jen. Excellent question. Thank you so much for asking it. So as it happens, through the results of that survey, we found that improving accessibility to the front entrance at 440 was among the top 3 priorities when we asked families, people we support, staff, and others where they wanted us to focus our efforts. And furthermore, it so happens that back in the summer, I believe it was in June, the foundation, with Juliet's support, submitted a grant proposal to the federal government through an accessibility grant initiative that they had at the time to, in fact, make those accessibility improvements. There was a very nice design that was done some time ago. It would really look at regrading, replacing that long ramp-like sidewalk in front of the building with something that's more accessible. And so we're hoping to hear back in the very near future the results of that grant, and fingers crossed we'll be successful and we'll be able to make some of those improvements. If I can take a moment to talk about the plan overall, we are very close to completing that plan. So thank you to everyone who participated in the survey. We've also invited our frontline staff, leaders, people we support, and other stakeholders to lend their voices and tell us what's important to them when it comes to making St.Amant a more accessible place, both from a built environment perspective, buildings, doors, ramps, etc., but also our policies, the way we interact, the way we communicate, accessibility in the broadest sense. Our next step is to hold a focus group for families, which is scheduled for this coming Monday, December the 13th at 7 o'clock, and there's still room to join. So if anyone would like to join and have their say, we would be so grateful if you could join us. And so once we have that focus group, we will rank our accessibility priorities, looking at cost, impact, and safety, and hope to begin making progress and having some plans beginning early in the new year to bring about those changes. So thanks again for that great question.
Thanks, Ben. And I'm going to go back to Anne. Do you have another question for us, Anne Fountain?
I do. Congratulations to those 2 individuals who are retiring and well earned, I'm sure. And welcome to whatever your new world is going to be, and success in it. And congratulations to those that will be promoted into those new positions. If I understood correctly, Peter is leaving for an intern position to Abilities Manitoba, which for me is a common theme. You can all chuckle and no, you're not, Peter? Okay, so I misunderstood that.
Peter's new role is within St.Amant. Yeah.
Okay, then that negates my question. Oh, but someone is taking over for your position.
Amanda Campbell will step up to be the director of CRP for the year.
Okay, so then that makes,
she's very
so that still makes my question valid then. Okay, so I take back my Abilities Manitoba comment. But unfortunately, when people shift and move, it creates gaps in communication, and it affects both the families and the loved ones that are supported by St.Amant. So my question would be, what measures are being taken to avoid these gaps, which affect the people that are supported, between the director, the coordinator, the team lead, and the staff themselves, to ensure that communication is flowing or is fluid in both directions?
Peter, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I think the good news is, Anne, that I'm still just 3 doors down from Amanda, and we'll be working very closely with her and with Sam over the coming year. So I don't see any gaps or communication challenges with that change, but I hear you loud and clear. We are certainly very aware that when we see turnover in team leader roles and assignment changes in coordinator roles, that can be very challenging for the individuals living in the homes and the families that have to develop new relationships. And we're trying to make sure that we're building really good systems for information to be recorded and stored, so that there isn't big losses when people are moved out of their positions for a variety of reasons. Could be life changes, could be illness, could be promotions, all kinds of things take people away from their current assignments. And we are trying our best to mitigate the loss of information that might occur when those changes happen.
Thank you.
Okay. What is the vision for St.Amant, especially health and transition services, for the next 5 years? So I'm going to throw this over to Sarah.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jen. Really great question. And I think we have implemented quite a few changes over the past few years. And I think part of that was establishing kind of those new areas of care and support, and really focusing on the transition of people supported out of health and transition services into community living environments. So, you know, those areas of care and that transition work will continue in a similar manner. When it comes to what's coming in the future, I think if I continue to see requests for support for children with medical complexity and high technology needs, so you know, ventilators and other assistive breathing devices, we've also seen an increase in requests for both pediatric and adult palliative or end-of-life care. And so we've done a lot of work with our staff team to get them trained and educated on providing that care. And we've certainly seen a higher number of requests for short-term support in our stabilization area. You know, so we expect to continue receiving those types of requests, and we expect to continue providing that type of support. And then as for other possibilities. We really look to the changing needs of our communities, as well as requests and changing needs of our funders to help inform us, as well as having our own discussions and planning around unmet needs. So if there's any follow-up questions to that answer, please feel free to reach out to me directly and I can support those answers.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, we've got a question here. Will a 3-year-old nonverbal toddler with autism who has recovered from autism and become verbal have a normal conversation and thinking just like a typical toddler in the future? I mean, in terms of making hard decisions, common sense, marriage, and everyday living situation, how will their future look? So I'm going to throw this over to Carrie, our Director of Autism and Psychology.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you very much for this question. I will start by saying that at this time, there really is no known cure for autism spectrum disorder, but I can share that early access to supports and services like the ones that are provided from St.Amant, from my program and the autism programs in Ben Adam's clinical services program, really help to prepare preschool children for readiness to enter into school. Each child is unique, so although I can't say what things might look like in the future for children, I can certainly share that over the last 23 years that the autism programs has been providing services to preschool children, we've seen children truly benefit in many, many different ways from the supports that St.Amant provides. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Carrie. And okay, we had a question about training. So in the past, new staff had experiential training. What was it like? For example, what was it like to have your teeth brushed by somebody else? Does current training still include this? And are there refresher courses of an experiential nature after being at St.Amant for a while? And I'm going to throw this over to Jennifer Kalimnik, who is responsible for all of our education and training.
I am excited that people are interested in our mindful practice training. So the course is called Mindful Practice for Direct Service Professionals, and it is mandatory for all staff. The intention was that we wanted to talk to them about how important it is to connect with people in a way that feels calm and thoughtful and intentional, so that we are not creating more stress within people's lives. It's a 2.5-hour class, and I said it was mandatory for all our staff, from the boardroom to the boiler room. And it went to a virtual format during the pandemic, and it has been quite successful. It's a little bit less experiential now. And last year we developed a 30-minute refresher course, and the intention was that it would be mandatory. Given the stressors of the pandemic, we have made that optional for now, but we will hopefully have an opportunity to move that forward in the future as a mandatory training. And it is a recorded virtual class, so people can tap in at any time. There's also a third level that we offer, which is called Mindful Practice Advocates. So this is for people who are particularly interested in how we interact with people through all the program areas. It's a 1-day training. It's got expanded experiences, and we haven't been able to hold it because of the pandemic, but we hope that we'll be able to soon. I think it's important to know that all of our training that we develop through corporate education, we think about how does this connect back to mindfulness and how people are interacting at the front line, even if it doesn't seem like it's a direct connect to the people we're supporting. And all families are welcome to attend this training. So if you're ever interested, just reach out to your program area director or through Jennifer Rodrigue or John, and we're happy to get you registered for that.
We're just selling all of our training tonight. Okay, I want to be really mindful that we're almost at 8 o'clock, and I know we've lost quite a number of people, which is very understandable because we're half an hour over time. And I know that some of our team also has some commitments and kids to pick up and things to get to. So I don't want to keep everybody. We do have some additional questions that were submitted that, but we know where they came from. So we're going to get these answers out to everybody as soon as we can. And I think we've got one final poll that Laura was going to put up for us before John has some closing remarks.
Okay, that's helpful feedback. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, so as Jen said, we did go over, but I think we wanted to try and get to some of the questions, and they were excellent questions. Just in closing, I want to say thank you all for attending tonight. It means a lot to us. To have this level of engagement and interest is just awesome. The one thing that I guess we have learned through COVID is this modem of communication, this virtual, is actually quite effective with families. We get pretty good engagement. So we're going to follow up. We're going to send an email out with contact information for the Family Advocacy Network. If you're interested in contacting them, we'll, I think, have a link to the recording of this event if you need to go back and kind of, refresh something you heard here today. We're going to attach some resources if it makes sense based on some of the questions and answers that we had this evening. And as Jen said, for the questions that we didn't get to, we will provide those and the answers back to the people who asked them. So with that, I wish all of you a very great holiday season. I hope you have a chance to connect with the people who mean the most to you in your lives. And again, thank you on behalf of all of us from St.Amant. Have a wonderful evening. Go Jets and go Bombers. Okay.